fair to compare Donald to NFL legend, Hall of Famer, LT, Lawrence Taylor?
I kind of think it is. And that's saying a lot coming from me because obviously being born and raised in New York City and growing up watching LT, just the greatest ever. I mean, you know, you could talk about the Dit Buckuses and the Mike Ditkas and the Mike Singletaries of the world and people like that. And, you know, Brian Urlacher, who just was in the Hall of Fame. We can get into all of that. But Lawrence Taylor definitely is the creme de la creme when we talk about guys playing that linebacker spot. That's not Aaron Donald. He's right on the defensive line, and I get all of that. But Lawrence Taylor had 132.5 sacks. One year, I believe he had like 20.5 sacks. 3 times in his career, he's had over 15 sacks in the season. That has yet to happen for Aaron Donald. I respect that. But Lawrence Taylor is at 132.5 over a 13-year career. Aaron Donald is at 53.5 in 5 years, and the 5th season isn't even complete yet. He still has about 5 to 6 games to go at 14.5 sacks right now. So who knows what that's going to materialize into. He's on pace to at least catch Lawrence Taylor when you consider that Lawrence Taylor had 13 years and he only has 5 thus far. You also have to think about the amount of times he's double teamed. It's right from the line of scrimmage. You've got him pushing back guys. You've got guys double and triple teaming him. Aaron Donald looks like a monster out there compared to everybody else. It's impossible to put ISO or single coverage on this guy. You got to double up on him. He's stopping. He's effective against the run. He's effective against the pass. He's terrorizing quarterbacks. He's applying pressure. He's doing a lot of the things that we have seen from the likes of Lawrence Taylor, even though he's coming from a deeper position and he's coming from various angles as well. All I'm saying is I'm not saying better or anything like that. I'll leave that up to you, Ryan, because you know football and I get it. And I'll stay in my place. But in terms of my mind's eye, when I see in terms of impact, the kind of impact Aaron Donald is having on opposing offenders and the way he is dominating them and the numbers being on par to catch Lawrence Taylor, I do think he warrants the discussion, not the ultimate conclusion as to who's better or worse, because I think it's all sacrilegious for us to say somebody is actually better than Lawrence Taylor. But we at least need to say this guy is sort of reminding us of the level of dominance we saw from the intimidating presence that was Lawrence Taylor.
He should not be compared to LT. It's only fair in the sense that LT is the greatest linebacker who ever lived. He's also the greatest defensive player who ever lived. By the way, at his peak, not for his career, but at his peak, by a lot. There's no one who's ever been as close to as valuable defensively as LT. Not close. Not Reggie White, not Bruce Smith, not Ray Lewis. Actually, the closest guy, I think, is Deion Sanders. Another guy you shouldn't compare any other corners to because he was just different. But you can compare Aaron Donald to LT in the sense that greatest linebacker ever. Aaron Donald's arguably, he's in the argument for greatest defensive tackle ever. He's in that argument. So in that sense, when you talk about the greatest of all time at their positions, you can do it. But guys, you know, J.J. Watt was clearly the best defensive player in football for a long time. And then for a couple of years, it was Aaron Donald. And I think when he's on the field, Khalil Mack has now taken that from Aaron Donald. And the reason I say that is because there are things that, you know, Khalil Mack can do a lot of what Aaron Donald can do. Aaron Donald can't do everything Khalil Mack can do. It's like in baseball when I used to hear Derek Jeter was a bad defensive player. Oh, this other guy, this first baseman's a good defensive player. Then why doesn't that guy play shortstop? Derek Jeter's so good defensively, he could play shortstop. Just wasn't great defensively for a shortstop, right? Aaron Donald can do all these things for a defensive tackle that other tackles can't do. But if he was as good as Khalil Mack, for example, could he play? Because Khalil Mack could play on the inside. Could he play on the outside? Could he play linebacker? So Aaron Donald, to take nothing away from him, is a great defensive player. He's arguably the greatest defensive tackle ever, certainly that I've seen. But he is not on Lawrence Taylor's level because Lawrence Taylor was operating on his own level, and the only comparable defensive value I've ever seen was when Deion Sanders, a guy who played a totally different position, was at his peak.
I'm going to have to go kind of in between you both. I think you can absolutely compare Aaron Donald or Lawrence Taylor, and here's why. Lawrence Taylor revolutionized rushing the passer from the outside linebacker position. He changed the way you looked at it. You started to go try to find people who looked like Lawrence Taylor, who had the same type of measurables that Lawrence Taylor has. The reason we got Derek Thomas's guy arrested, so the reasons we have Khalil Mack, the reason we have Von Miller's is because of what Lawrence Taylor was able to do. He made that position valuable, and he made it valuable from a different athletic standpoint than we've ever seen. And Aaron Donald is doing the exact same thing from the defensive tackle position. I understand what you're saying, Max, about him not being able to go out and rush the passer from the outside like Khalil Mack or play linebacker like Khalil Mack. But he doesn't have to. From a guy who gets doubled over 70% of the time, the pressure he can generate on a quarterback. And one of the plays that I watched that made me change my mind about Aaron Donald, and you talk about a guy just being different, was the fumble that he picked up against the Seattle Seahawks. When he picked up that ball, it wasn't like a big man who was rumbling and stumbling and tumbling down the field. He looked like a beautiful athlete carrying the ball. And that's what makes him different. He's not the tall guy. He's not the big guy. He's not the 6'3", 300-pound run-stopping defensive tackle that we used to look for high in the draft. He's today's defensive tackle. He's the defensive tackle that's going to get after the quarterback that drops back 40 times in the game. He's the guy you want chasing these quarterbacks who are dual threats and mobile. I believe Aaron Donald is changing the game, and so in that aspect, you can compare him to Lawrence Taylor.
I mean, there have been different guys who changed the game. I get it. He's an MVP candidate. Aaron Donald is amazing. As I said, between J.J. Watt and I believe we're entering the Khalil Mack era if he can stay healthy. Aaron Donald's the guy, and he's comparable to either guy in many ways. It's just you have to consider what is required at the defensive tackle position versus what is required at other positions, and it takes a better overall athlete to play what, the position Lawrence Taylor did, right? Who can be the answer to your tight end or even sometimes to a wideout, let alone to your pass rush.
You keep talking about moving into the Khalil Mack era. These guys are like around the same age.
Yeah, they were drafted the same draft.